Some books don't just inform, they transform. Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one of those rare works that has shaped millions of lives across generations. It's not about quick hacks or shortcuts. It's about timeless principles that build character, discipline, and effectiveness. Covey begins with a powerful idea. True success is not about personality tricks or surface skills. It's about character. It's about aligning your life with principles that never change. Honesty, responsibility, integrity, and growth. These principles form the foundation of effectiveness, both in personal life and in leadership. The book introduces 7 habits. Not tips, not techniques, but habits. Habits are patterns of behavior that, once ingrained, shape your destiny. Covey explains that habits are the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. They're not things you do once. They're things you become. The first 3 habits focus on self-mastery. Moving from dependence to independence. They teach us to take responsibility, to set clear goals, and to prioritize what truly matters. The next 3 habits focus on relationships. Moving from independence to interdependence. They teach us to listen, to collaborate, and to build win-win solutions. And the final habit ties them all together. The habit of renewal, of sharpening the saw, of continuous growth. Covey's framework is cinematic in its simplicity yet profound in its depth. He paints a vision of a life where you stop reacting to circumstances and start creating them. A life where you stop chasing success and start building significance. A life where effectiveness is not about doing more, but about doing what matters most. This book is not just theory. It's filled with stories, examples, and practical steps that make the habits real. Covey shows us how to shift from being victims of circumstance to being creators of destiny. He shows us how to replace shallow values with timeless principles. And he shows us how to build habits that last a lifetime. In this cinematic summary, we'll explore each of the 7 habits in depth. Habit 1. Be proactive, taking responsibility for your life. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind, defining your vision and goals. Habit 3. Put first things first, prioritizing what truly matters. Habit 4. Think win-win, building relationships based on mutual benefit. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, mastering empathy and communication. Habit 6. Synergize, creating results through collaboration. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw, renewing yourself for continuous growth. Each habit is a building block. Together, they form a framework for effectiveness that transcends culture, time, and circumstance. Stay with me until the end, because once you master these 7 habits, you won't just be more productive. You'll be more purposeful. You won't just achieve more. You'll become more. And that transformation is the true power of Covey's work. Stephen Covey begins with the foundation of effectiveness. Habit 1. Be proactive. This habit is about taking responsibility for your life. It's about recognizing that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can always control how you respond. Covey explains that most people live reactively. They blame circumstances, luck, or other people for their problems. They say things like, "I can't help it," or "That's just the way I am." But reactive living makes you a victim of circumstance, gives away your power. Proactive people, on the other hand, understand that their choices shape their destiny. They focus on what Covey calls the circle of influence, the things they can actually control. Reactive people waste energy on the circle of concern, things they worry about but cannot change, like the weather, the economy, or other people's opinions. Covey illustrates this with a powerful metaphor. Imagine 2 circles. One small, one large. The small circle is your circle of influence, your actions, your words, your decisions. The large circle is your circle of concern, everything else. Reactive people spend their energy on the large circle, shrinking their influence. Proactive people spend their energy on the small circle, expanding their influence. Being proactive means shifting your language. Instead of saying, "I can't," you say, "I choose." Instead of saying, "He makes me angry," you say, "I control my emotions." Language reveals mindset. Reactive language gives away power. Proactive language claims it back. Covey shares stories of people who transform their lives by being proactive. One man, stuck in a dead-end job, stopped blaming his boss and started building new skills. Another, trapped in a toxic relationship, stopped waiting for change and chose to set boundaries. In each case, the turning point was responsibility. Proactivity is not about controlling everything. It's about controlling yourself. It's about recognizing that your greatest power is your ability to choose. You cannot choose what happens, but you can choose how to respond. And that choice makes all the difference. Covey also emphasizes the importance of values. Proactive people live by principles, not moods. They act based on what's right, not what's easy. They don't let circumstances dictate their behavior. They let values guide it. He challenges us to test our proactivity. Think about a situation where you feel powerless. Ask yourself, what can I control? What choices can I make? What actions can I take? The answers reveal your circle of influence. Being proactive also means taking initiative. Don't wait for opportunities. Create them. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for change. Be the change. Proactive people don't sit back and hope. They step forward and lead. Covey warns that reactive living leads to frustration, resentment, and stagnation. Proactive living leads to growth, empowerment, and effectiveness. The difference is not in circumstances, but in choices. This habit is the foundation of all the others. Without proactivity, you cannot begin with the end in mind. You cannot put first things first. You cannot build win-win relationships. Because effectiveness begins with responsibility. Think about your own life. Where are you being reactive? Where are you blaming circumstances? Where are you giving away your power? And where can you be proactive? Where can you take responsibility? Where can you choose differently? Covey's message is clear. Habit 1 is not just about action. It's about identity. It's about becoming the kind of person who takes responsibility, who chooses values over moods, who focuses on influence over concern. It's about becoming proactive. This section of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a call to empowerment. It reminds us that while we cannot control everything, we can always control ourselves. And that choice, the choice to be proactive, is the first step toward effectiveness. Stephen Covey's second habit is one of vision, clarity, and purpose. Begin with the end in mind. This habit is about imagining your destination before you start the journey. It's about defining what truly matters so that every step you take moves you closer to your ultimate goals. Covey begins with a powerful exercise. Imagine attending your own funeral. Picture the people who matter most: family, friends, colleagues. What would you want them to say about you? What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? What legacy do you want to leave behind? This exercise forces us to confront the ultimate end. And from that perspective, we can design our lives with intention. Most people live reactively, drifting from one task to another, chasing short-term goals without a clear vision. They climb the ladder of success, only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. Habit 2 prevents this mistake. It ensures that your ladder is leaning against the right wall before you start climbing. Covey explains that effectiveness is not about speed, but direction. You can be efficient at climbing, but if you're climbing the wrong ladder, efficiency is meaningless. Beginning with the end in mind ensures that your direction is aligned with your deepest values. This habit is about leadership. Management is about doing things right. Leadership is about doing the right things. Without vision, management becomes meaningless. With vision, management becomes powerful. Covey emphasizes the importance of a personal mission statement. A mission statement is a written declaration of your values, goals, and vision. It's a compass that guides your decisions. It reminds you of what matters most when distractions arise. Keeps you focused when challenges appear. He shares examples of mission statements. One person's mission might be to live with integrity, to nurture family, and to contribute to community. Another's might be to pursue excellence, to inspire others, and to leave a legacy of growth. Each mission statement is unique, but all provide clarity. Covey warns that without a mission statement, you risk living by other people's agendas. You become reactive, chasing shallow goals, and losing sight of what truly matters. With a mission statement, you live proactively, guided by values and focused on purpose. Habit 2 also applies to organizations. Companies that begin with the end in mind create visions that inspire employees, align strategies, and drive success. Without vision, organizations drift. With vision, they thrive. Covey challenges us to reflect on our own lives. What is your end? What legacy do you want to leave? What values define you? What goals matter most? The answers to these questions form the foundation of Habit 2. He explains that beginning with the end in mind transforms daily decisions. When you know your destination, you can prioritize effectively. You stop wasting time on trivialities. You stop chasing shallow goals. You focus on what truly matters. This habit also brings peace. When you live with vision, you stop comparing yourself to others. You stop chasing approval. You stop fearing failure. Because you know your path, your values, and your end. Covey's message is clear. Habit 2 is about vision. It's about defining your end before you begin. It's about creating a mission statement that guides your life. It's about aligning your actions with your values. And it's about living with purpose, not just activity. Think about your own life. What is your mission? What is your vision? What is your end? Begin with that end in mind and let it guide every step you take. Stephen Covey's third habit is about discipline, priorities, and focus. Put first things first. If habit 2 is about vision, knowing where you want to go, habit 3 is about execution, making sure your daily actions align with that vision. Covey explains that most people confuse urgency with importance. They spend their days reacting to urgent tasks, emails, phone calls, deadlines, while neglecting important tasks that build long-term success, like planning, learning, and nurturing relationships. The result is a life filled with activity but lacking direction. Habit 3 challenges us to shift from urgency to importance. It's about managing time not by schedules, but by priorities. It's about saying no to distractions so you can say yes to what truly matters. Covey introduces the time management matrix, a tool that categorizes tasks into 4 quadrants. Quadrant I: urgent and important. Crises, deadlines, emergencies. Quadrant 2: not urgent but important. Planning, relationship building, personal growth. Quadrant 3: urgent but not important. Interruptions, meetings, shallow tasks. Quadrant 4: not urgent and not important. Time wasters, trivial activities. Most people live in quadrants I and 3, constantly reacting to urgency. Effective people focus on quadrant 2, the important but not urgent tasks that build the future. Covey explains that quadrant 2 activities are the key to effectiveness. They prevent crises, strengthen relationships, and build skills. They don't scream for attention, but they quietly shape destiny. Putting first things first requires courage. It means saying no to urgent distractions. It means resisting the pressure of others' agendas. It means choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort. Covey shares stories of leaders who transformed their lives by focusing on quadrant 2. One executive stopped drowning in meetings and began investing time in mentoring his team. Another parent stopped chasing deadlines and began spending quality time with family. In each case, the shift from urgency to importance created lasting impact. This habit is also about self-discipline. Vision without discipline is a dream. Discipline without vision is drudgery. But vision with discipline creates effectiveness. Habit 2 gives you the vision. Habit 3 gives you the discipline. Together they create success. Covey emphasizes that putting first things first is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. It's about aligning daily actions with values. It's about living intentionally, not reactively. He challenges us to examine our schedules. How much time do we spend in quadrant 2? How much time do we waste in quadrant 3 and 4? What urgent distractions are stealing our focus? What important tasks are we neglecting? Putting first things first also requires balance. It's not just about work. It's about health, relationships, and personal growth. Effective people prioritize renewal, family, and contribution alongside career. Covey's message is clear. Habit 3 is about priorities. It's about focusing on importance over urgency. It's about living by values, not by schedules. It's about putting first things first. Think about your own life. What are your first things? What matters most to you? Are you putting them first, or are they buried under urgent distractions? The answer to that question defines your effectiveness. Stephen Covey's fourth habit is about relationships, collaboration, and abundance. Think win-win. This habit is about shifting from competition to cooperation, from scarcity to abundance, and from self-interest to mutual benefit. Covey explains that most people operate with a scarcity mindset. They believe that life is a zero-sum game. If one person wins, another must lose. This mindset creates competition, jealousy, and conflict. It leads to win-lose or lose-win outcomes, where one person gains at the expense of another. But effective people operate with an abundance mindset. They believe there is enough success, opportunity, and happiness for everyone. They seek solutions where all parties benefit. They think win-win. Covey outlines 4 common paradigms. Win-lose, I win, you lose. This mindset breeds arrogance and domination. Lose-win, you win, I lose. This mindset breeds resentment and weakness. Lose-lose. Nobody wins. This mindset breeds revenge and destruction. Win-win, we both win. This mindset breeds trust, cooperation, and growth. Win-win is not about compromise. It's not about splitting the difference. It's about finding solutions where everyone genuinely benefits. It's about creating outcomes that strengthen relationships instead of weakening them. Covey emphasizes that win-win requires both courage and consideration. Courage means standing up for your own needs. Consideration means respecting the needs of others. Without courage, you fall into lose-win. Without consideration, you fall into win-lose. Win-win requires both. He shares stories of leaders who practiced win-win. One manager, instead of competing with his team, collaborated to create shared success. One parent, instead of imposing rules, worked with children to create agreements. In each case, win-win built trust and strengthened relationships. Covey also explains that win-win is not always possible. Sometimes values clash or goals conflict. In those cases, the best alternative is win-win or no deal. This means that if mutual benefit cannot be achieved, it's better to walk away than to force a win-lose outcome. This principle protects relationships and prevents resentment. Win-win thinking transforms negotiations, partnerships, and friendships. It shifts the focus from competition to collaboration. It creates solutions that are bigger than the sum of their parts. It builds trust, loyalty, and long-term success. Covey challenges us to examine our own mindset. Do we see life as a competition, or as a collaboration? Do we seek win-lose outcomes, or win-win solutions? Do we operate from scarcity, or abundance? He explains that win-win begins with character. It requires integrity, being honest about your needs. It requires maturity, balancing courage and consideration. And it requires abundance mentality, believing there is enough for everyone. This habit also requires skill. Win-win is not automatic. It requires listening, empathy, negotiation, and creativity. It requires the ability to see beyond your own perspective and to craft solutions that serve all parties. Covey's message is clear. Habit 4 is about relationships. It's about shifting from competition to cooperation. It's about seeking mutual benefit. It's about thinking win-win. Think about your own life. Where are you operating with scarcity? Where are you competing instead of collaborating? Where can you shift to win-win? The answers to these questions will transform your relationships and your effectiveness. Stephen Covey's fifth habit is about communication, empathy, and influence. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This habit is the cornerstone of effective relationships. It teaches us that listening is more powerful than speaking, and empathy is more persuasive than argument. Covey explains that most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. They filter everything through their own perspective, preparing their response while the other person is still talking. This reactive listening leads to miscommunication, conflict, and shallow relationships. Habit 5 challenges us to listen differently. It teaches us to practice empathetic listening, listening not just to words but to feelings, meanings, and perspectives. Empathetic listening requires patience, humility, and genuine interest. It means suspending judgment, silencing your inner response, and entering the other person's world. Covey shares that empathetic listening is like giving someone psychological air. Just as our bodies need oxygen, our hearts and minds need understanding. When people feel understood, they relax, open up, and trust. When they don't, they resist, defend, and withdraw. He illustrates this with powerful examples. A parent who truly listens to a child discovers the fears behind the anger. A leader who truly listens to employees uncovers the frustrations behind resistance. A friend who truly listens discovers the pain behind silence. In each case, understanding transforms the relationship. Seeking first to understand does not mean agreeing. It means respecting. It means acknowledging the other person's perspective before sharing your own. It means building trust before seeking influence. Covey explains that influence flows from empathy. When people feel understood, they become open to understanding you. When you listen first, your words carry more weight. When you respect others' perspectives, they respect yours. This habit also applies to negotiations, leadership, and conflict resolution. In negotiations, listening first uncovers hidden needs and creates win-win solutions. In leadership, listening first builds trust and loyalty. In conflict resolution, listening first dissolves tension and opens paths to peace. Covey warns that most people skip this step. They rush to be understood, pushing their perspective without listening. This creates resistance, defensiveness, and conflict. Habit 5 reverses the order. Listen first, speak second. He challenges us to practice empathetic listening daily. Instead of giving advice, ask questions. Instead of judging, explore. Instead of reacting, reflect. The goal is not to fix, but to understand. Covey also emphasizes that this habit requires character. It requires humility, the willingness to put others first. It requires patience, the willingness to listen fully. And it requires courage, the willingness to be vulnerable. Think about your own life. How often do you listen to reply, rather than to understand? How often do you rush to be heard, rather than to hear? How often do you miss the meaning behind the words? Habit 5 is a reminder that communication is not about talking. It's about connection. It's about empathy. It's about seeking first to understand, then to be understood. Covey's message is clear. If you want to influence others, listen first. If you want to build trust, listen first. If you want to strengthen relationships, listen first. Because understanding is the foundation of being understood. Stephen Covey's 6th habit is about creativity, collaboration, and unity. Synergize. This habit is the art of creating outcomes that are greater than the sum of their parts. It's about harnessing differences, building trust, and producing results that no individual could achieve alone. Covey explains that synergy is not just cooperation. It's not compromise. It's creation. It's when 2 or more people work together in such a way that their combined strengths produce something extraordinary. Most people fear differences. They see them as threats. They avoid conflict, resist diversity, and seek agreement through compromise. But compromise often means settling for less. Synergy, on the other hand, means embracing differences to create more. Covey illustrates this with nature. When 2 plants grow side by side, their roots intertwine, strengthening both. When 2 rivers merge, they create a stronger current. In the same way, when people synergize, they create outcomes that are richer, stronger, and more powerful. Synergy requires trust. Without trust, differences become conflict. With trust, differences become creativity. Trust allows people to share openly, listen deeply, and build together. Covey shares stories of teams that achieved synergy. One company, facing a crisis, brought together diverse departments. Instead of competing, they collaborated, creating solutions no single department could have imagined. One family, facing challenges, embraced each member's perspective, creating unity instead of division. In each case, synergy transformed differences into strength. He explains that synergy is not about uniformity. It's about diversity. It's about valuing different perspectives, skills, and experiences. It's about recognizing that differences are not weaknesses, but strengths. Synergy also requires humility. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers. It means being open to learning from others. It means valuing collaboration over ego. Covey challenges us to practice synergy daily. Instead of resisting differences, embrace them. Instead of competing, collaborate. Instead of compromising, create. This habit applies to families, teams, organizations, and communities. Families that synergize build stronger bonds. Teams that synergize achieve greater success. Organizations that synergize innovate faster. Communities that synergize create lasting change. Covey warns that without synergy, relationships stagnate. Without synergy, organizations settle for mediocrity. Without synergy, communities divide. Synergy is the key to growth, innovation, and unity. He emphasizes that synergy is not automatic. It requires effort, trust, and creativity. It requires listening, respecting, and valuing differences. It requires courage to step beyond comfort zones and into collaboration. Think about your own life. Where are you resisting differences? Where are you settling for compromise? Where can you embrace synergy? The answers to these questions will transform your relationships, your work, and your effectiveness. Covey's message is clear. Habit 6 is about creation. It's about turning differences into strengths. It's about building trust, embracing diversity, and producing extraordinary outcomes. It's about synergizing. This section of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a call to collaboration. It reminds us that together, we can achieve more than we ever could alone. And it challenges us to stop fearing differences and start synergizing them into strength. Stephen Covey's 7th habit is about renewal, balance, and sustainability. Sharpen the saw. This habit reminds us that effectiveness is not just about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about taking care of yourself so you can continue to grow, contribute, and thrive. Covey begins with a story. Imagine a man sawing wood. He's exhausted, sweating, and frustrated because the saw is dull. Someone suggests he stop and sharpen the saw. But the man replies, "I don't have time to sharpen the saw, I'm too busy sawing." This is the paradox of modern life. We're so busy working that we neglect renewal. And without renewal, our effectiveness declines. Habit 7 challenges us to invest in ourselves. It's about sharpening the saw in 4 dimensions: physical, mental, emotional/social, and spiritual. Physical renewal. Covey explains that physical renewal is about caring for your body. It means exercising regularly, eating healthy, resting adequately, and managing stress. Without physical health, effectiveness collapses. Energy fuels productivity. Discipline fuels resilience. He shares examples of leaders who transformed their lives by prioritizing health. One executive, constantly exhausted, began exercising daily and discovered renewed energy. Another, overwhelmed by stress, began practicing relaxation techniques and found clarity. Physical renewal is the foundation of effectiveness. Mental renewal. Mental renewal is about continuous learning. Covey emphasizes that knowledge is power, but only if it's pursued consistently. Reading, studying, and challenging your mind keep you sharp. Without mental renewal, you stagnate. With it, you grow. He encourages us to read widely, to learn new skills, and to stay curious. He explains that mental renewal is not just about professional growth, but personal enrichment. It's about expanding your perspective, deepening your understanding, and sharpening your intellect. Emotional/social renewal. Emotional and social renewal is about relationships. Covey explains that effectiveness is not just about individual achievement, but about connection. Nurturing relationships, practicing empathy, and building trust renew the heart. He shares that emotional renewal comes from love, friendship, and service. Comes from listening, caring, and contributing. Without emotional renewal, loneliness and resentment drain effectiveness. With it, joy and support fuel resilience. Spiritual renewal. Spiritual renewal is about meaning and purpose. Covey explains that spirituality is not about religion alone, but about connection to higher values. It's about aligning your life with principles that transcend circumstance. He encourages practices like meditation, reflection, and service. He explains that spiritual renewal gives life direction. It reminds us of what matters most. It anchors us in values when challenges arise. The balance of renewal. Covey emphasizes that sharpening the saw requires balance. Neglecting one dimension weakens the others. Physical health supports mental clarity. Mental growth supports emotional resilience. Emotional connection supports spiritual strength. Spiritual purpose supports all dimensions. He challenges us to create routines of renewal. Exercise regularly. Read daily. Connect deeply. Reflect often. These habits sharpen the saw and sustain effectiveness. Covey warns that neglecting renewal leads to burnout, stagnation, and decline. Without sharpening the saw, effectiveness fades. With sharpening the saw, effectiveness grows. He shares that the most effective people are not those who work endlessly, but those who renew consistently. They invest in themselves, balance their lives, and sustain their growth. Think about your own life. Where is your saw dull? Where are you neglecting renewal? Where can you sharpen the saw? The answers to these questions will transform your effectiveness. Covey's message is clear. Habit 7 is about renewal. It's about investing in yourself. It's about balancing physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. It's about sharpening the saw. This section of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a call to sustainability. It reminds us that effectiveness is not a sprint, but a marathon. And it challenges us to stop, sharpen the saw, and continue the journey with strength, clarity, and purpose. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is more than a book. It's a blueprint for living with purpose, integrity, and effectiveness. We've explored 7 timeless habits. Be proactive. Take responsibility for your life. Begin with the end in mind. Define your vision and goals. Put first things first. Prioritize what truly matters. Think win-win. Build relationships based on mutual benefit. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Master empathy and communication. Synergize. Embrace differences to create extraordinary outcomes. Sharpen the saw. Renew yourself for continuous growth. Together, these habits form a framework that transcends culture, time, and circumstance. They teach us that effectiveness is not about shortcuts or tricks. It's about character. It's about aligning our lives with principles that never change. Covey's message is clear. Success is not something you chase. It's something you build. It's not about personality but about principles. It's not about activity but about purpose. Think about your own journey. Which of these habits do you already practice? Which do you need to strengthen? Which will transform your life if you commit to them today? The answers to these questions will shape your destiny far more than any external circumstance. This cinematic summary is just the beginning. The full book dives deeper into each habit, offering stories, exercises, and practical steps that can transform your life. Get your copy from Amazon to read the book completely. The link is given below in the description. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon. Because every week, we bring you cinematic book summaries that don't just inform, they transform.